Why should we fund NASA, and should we increase their funding? These are both good questions to ask, but before we can really answer either, we need to understand how much funding NASA currently receives. A poll conducted by the Space Review found that, on average, Americans estimated that NASA received 24% of the national budget. The actual amount, just 0.47%. In comparison, the Department of Defense, which receives the largest amount of the federal discretionary spending budget at $622 billion annually, or about 54%, spends more every year on operations and maintenance for the F-35 fighter fleet than NASA's entire annual budget. The reason for funding the Department of Defense is relatively obvious. A country needs defense. But what about NASA? The reasons for funding them are perhaps less obvious. Why do we need to send satellites and space telescopes into orbit or launch humans into space? The reasons are certainly less obvious, but no less important. The first being the practical benefits that NASA provides, both in technology and in research. Featured here is a mosaic of 100 different images of scientific and technological achievements that NASA has either directly created or led to the creation of. About half of what you see here are everyday household items, everything from cordless vacuums to cordless power tools to surgical equipment and pacemakers, all made possible by the technological developments and research NASA created. High above the Earth, on board the ISS, astronauts perform research on cancer cells in the unique microgravity environment to better understand how they develop and to help to create cures for cancer. They also study the effect of space on humans, both the radiation and the microgravity, in order to better understand human physiology and prepare us for moving deeper into space to other planets and moons in our solar system. High above the Earth, NASA has orbiting spacecraft that constantly take measurements of soil moisture here on Earth, helping farmers everywhere from California to Africa prepare and deal with droughts in planting their crops. And important to all of us here on Earth is NASA's study of the climate and how human activity affects it, and how we can prevent irreparable damage to our planet. Furthermore, NASA is preparing a mission to launch within the next 2 years that will test its ability to deflect an asteroid that could in the future potentially impact the Earth. While no dangerous asteroids on a collision course with Earth have yet been detected, this technology is necessary for future survival of the human race. Another reason that continued funding to NASA is so vital is the economic benefit that they provide to the United States. This map shows the economic return generated by NASA in every one of the 50 United States, some higher than $3 billion from NASA activities and contracts in those states. The Hill reported that this relatively small investment provides a greater dollar-for-dollar economic and strategic return than any other civilian government agency. They went on to say that NASA programs and contractors who support them represent approximately 500,000 highly skilled and highly paid American jobs. The final reason that funding for NASA is so vital is the scientific return that they provide in the form of data and images for analysis. The Hubble Space Telescope helped to determine the exact age of the universe, and determined that supermassive black holes reside at the center of nearly every galaxy. The Kepler telescope has discovered over 2,300 planets orbiting stars other than our own, at least 30 of which are habitable. The Juno probe has returned stunning images of Jupiter's poles and equatorial storms. While companies like SpaceX are already developing launch technology for satellites and humans, the biggest benefit that we would lose by privatizing or decreasing NASA's funding would be the scientific research. Right now, every piece of data that NASA collects, every image that they take, is in the public domain, meaning that it can be used by anyone, anywhere, for any purpose. In order for companies to be incentivized to provide that same kind and quality of research, it would necessitate that that data no longer be publicly available. Companies would have to start charging for the use of the data that they collect. And suddenly, all of that data would no longer be available to the public, to anyone who wanted to do research, but rather only to those who could afford to do research, only to those who could afford to pay to make a scientific discovery, only to other large companies that wanted to use it for their own commercial purposes. Individuals would no longer be able to access that data and use it to make discoveries and new innovations. All of the technological innovations that came about from NASA's research and building of space shuttles and space equipment would no longer be possible, because all of that technology would be locked up in copyrights for decades, and other companies would not be able to build upon that technology and create the household items that you saw before that we use every day. So when you hear that the White House is threatening to decommission and privatize the International Space Station, or to cut NASA's funding in their programs, remember that what they are really threatening is a skilled American workforce and billions of dollars of economic benefit across the country, as well as the technological and scientific research and innovations that benefit our entire country and our entire world.